Welcome to the Next Gen Environmental Firm, the podcast where we speak with leaders, founders, operators, and investors who are helping shape the future of environmental and sustainability-driven businesses. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Juliana Garaizar from Energy Backers and Portfolia. Juliana, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you, Jolanta, for having me.
Definitely. And especially up to now, I've been talking to companies that they have ideas and looking for investors. And today I have a pleasure to talk to you from another side of the business as well. So can we start about your role within the both companies, so Energy Backers and Portfolia? What is your role in both of you, and how these companies are connected?
Definitely. So we can start with maybe Portfolia, since I've been a lot longer there. This year I'm celebrating my 10 years at Portfolia.
Congratulations!
I know that because my daughter just turned 10 this Tuesday. Portfolia is a platform of funds that are mainly led by women. We accept men, and there's a lot of couples that are investing with us, father-daughter teams, and diverse investors. But what our mission is to activate more diverse investors. Investors who have never invested in venture capital in the past, and many reasons why, but in general it's because they don't have access to that kind of asset class. We are trying to demystify that by doing two very important things. One is lowering the ticket size for a minimum investment. Our minimum ticket size is of $25K in dollars, or sometimes if there's a special, condition where, they cannot do more, we can even lower it down to $10K. And this investment not only comes with very big results, a return on investment. Some of our funds are in the top 2 percentile in terms of returns. And I'm talking about any fund, not only funds that are focusing on diversity. But also, more importantly, we have a learn by doing model. So even though we have, in general, 4 to 5 partners or lead investors who make the final decisions on the funds, our meetings are virtual, and every what we call LP or limited partner, every investor in Portfolia can attend our monthly pitch sessions, where companies present to us, but also after they present to us, we have an internal discussion with the LPs on what are the pros and the cons of potentially investing in these companies and whether we invest or not. And in general, we also invite our LPs to participate in the due diligence and sometimes even in the negotiation with us. They also participate in deal flow selection. So in many cases, they can be very much or little active as they want. Some LPs in Portfolia are passive investors. Some of them are very active and actually get trained and empowered to become investors in their own right. So in some cases, some of the Portfolia LPs have become general partners and leaders of other funds, other Portfolia funds. Sometimes they have created their own funds. Sometimes they have created their own angel networks. So we are a sort of incubator of investors. And I would say also we are a sort of movement, because we are empowering women and diverse investors to think about investing as a way for impact. So it's not only as a way for ROI, but a lot of the investments we do have some kind of impact. We have a fund that is specific on women's health, on active aging, food and ag tech, green and sustainability. And of course, the one I'm involved with is called Rising America. And we invest a lot in bridging gaps in terms of gender, race, and we really are trying to invest in very growing areas and markets in the US, like the Black and brown markets.
Brilliant. That's great. So how Energy Backer is involved in all of this as well with Portfolia?
Yes. So as I mentioned, Portfolia has been for 10 years. So during those 10 years, because Portfolia, the model is that you don't have a full-time GP. Most of us are involved in other funds or other initiatives. And through those initiatives, we bring a lot of deal flow that we share with the Portfolia network. And that's why in many cases, Portfolia doesn't lead deals. We follow because we have other funds in our ecosystem that lead. And the great thing about that is that we have our connections. We have more than 1,000 LPs, so a lot of them bring deal flow. They bring connections for business development. Many of them are in boards or in other funds. So this connectivity is really key. So that means that during my Portfolia career, I've been having other roles. And my first role when I started Portfolia was I was leading the Houston Angel Network, and we were the most active angel network in the world. Then I put together and I led the fund for the Texas Medical Center. And then I brought Greentown Labs, which is a climate tech incubator based out of Boston. I brought it to Houston and I managed it for 4 years. So during all of these times, I've been also investing in parallel to Portfolia. And right now at EnergyBackers, that's what I'm doing too. So EnergyBackers is more than an incubator. We have access to co-working spaces in different places around the world, like here in Houston, where I'm located, or in London, in Bilbao, and Dallas and Glasgow. But more importantly, some of the companies that I've started to help 10 years ago, sometimes investing personally or through the Houston Angel Network or other funds like Portfolia, still need help. So right now, not only we are helping companies that are at incubation stage, that could be, I would say, Series seed, sometimes pre-seed to Series A, but also the companies that we helped very early on, almost 7 to 10 years ago, now need Series B, Series C, and they also need project finance, and in some cases, they even need help with international expansion. So we decided a lot of our companies, because they are in the deep tech, hard tech space where it's more difficult to exit and you have infrastructure involved, that we still needed to help them. And that's one of the reasons why EnergyBackers was created. It was created by merging two teams, Greenbackers team that is based out of the UK that has been doing this for 15 years, and our team in the US that also has been doing this for quite some time. So we are really getting the best of both worlds. A lot of companies that we've been helping in the past over the years in the UK are very interested in the US markets. They're interested in raising money. They're interested in getting corporate partners for deployment of their technology, sometimes through pilots, sometimes from first-of-a-kind plans, or sometimes for full project finance plans. But in our case, since we are in Texas, we have a lot of companies in Texas and all over the US who are now eyeing the UK and EU markets, because there's sometimes more funding available for certain sectors like wind, solar, and others. So some of our companies that were in Texas for wind have been able to get funding and grants in Scotland, for example, and that has been the benefits of being part of our ecosystem.
And I believe Portfolio making such a huge impact to many companies. You know, that is one of the biggest. Yeah.
As I mentioned, has mentored and incubated many leaders that are now running their own funds, but also is the biggest investor in women's health in the US and I assume the world. So it means a lot. And we invest in things that otherwise wouldn't see the markets. Yeah. And that's what I think people don't understand, that, you know, because the VC is very male dominated and there's not a lot of women in VC. Male GPs or, you know, analysts get to decide what gets invested in, and in many cases, companies that are good for women's health or you know, have women don't get the same attention. But you know, it's called homophilia. There's a very strong correlation between who invests and what gets invested in. And I think that's why Portfolia's mission to activate more women and diverse investors is key, because only when you change the face of the investors, the face of the entrepreneurs who get investment will change too. And that's actually part of my Kaufman Fellowship, end of fellowship project. That was the research, how to bridge the gender gap in investing with solutions like Portfolia.
So, in your job, what do you like the most?
Okay, so what I like the most is creating impact. And I would say creating impact by making deals. It was always the platform that would enable me to make deals happen and connecting things or people that were disconnected and putting them together and say like, okay, let's make a deal here. And what makes me happier when suddenly we sign and there's an investment happening, and of course over the years I get a return on investment. This year I got 2 exits out of investments that I did in 2018. So it takes a while, but when it happens, just make it happen and magic happens. So that is what I like the most.
Right. And what is interesting as well, listening to you, like, is that you and your company understands, what it takes, and it's not that returns on investment tomorrow, it takes time.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing from another side saying, like, we're really lacking of investors who understands the environmental sustainability projects, because they are not overnight investments and returns. And it's like, that's really good to hear. And I think this podcast will inspire, you might have many, many people contacting Portfolio and Energy Backers. Now, let's shift the gear a little bit. So what major shifts are you seeing right now in clean energy, climate tech, and sustainability environment?
So 2 major shifts, and all of them caused by geopolitics. Because of geopolitics, again, in the world and the wars and the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, energy security is becoming a thing, and it's really impacting oil prices, gas prices at the pump. So people are feeling the pain, right? And when they do, things start to matter. At the end of the day, when I say green, sometimes the end result is the green of the money, right? This is not only the green of sustainability, is the green dollars that are affected. And that's when a lot of people no longer talk about sustainability or renewable energy, but they talk about a portfolio of energy sources that are needed to even survive as a nation. So it becomes part of national security. And also the fact that, at the same time, if you don't have a balanced approach, I think in the beginning we thought about green energy as a nice to have, and suddenly in many cases has become a big hedge against risks that some other sources of energy may have because of geopolitics. So I see those things very clearly, and the way it's impacting the world is again positive and negative. So there's an interesting balance there, because on the positive side, all the green energy and sustainability entrepreneurs that can say like, okay, we can offer cheap energy to power your data centers or to power your critical infrastructure, people are going to listen. So now it's not only green and nice to have, it's a matter of national security. But at the same time, some kinds of energy, no matter what, are being penalized in some areas of the world, like wind, for example, has received a big blow, no pun intended. That's why we are helping some of our companies get funding in Europe and Canada, because wind suddenly is interestingly part of this big dichotomy where, sometimes in Texas, we run at 70% of wind energy, and somehow wind developments are no longer being financed. So that's the dichotomy, and I think entrepreneurs are being really good at basically not changing what they're doing, but just reframing the narrative and saying like, okay, this is not longer about carbon neutral or carbon negative. It's more about how are you going to power your country in the face of external threats? How are you make sure you're energy independent, that you're resilient, that your infrastructure holds? All of these things suddenly come from energy tech to almost defense tech. And before, we used to have a lot of grants for this kind of companies under the Department of Energy. Now, a lot of them are becoming critical infrastructure, critical materials, critical minerals. And suddenly, the DoD, Department of Defense, and other areas like Navy and others are interested in funding those.
Okay, that's very interesting. What about the hydrogen? Is this as well? There's more popping up because it has up and downs, right? How are you feeling about the hydrogen?
So I think hydrogen is always going to be there. It's energy, but it's energy storage actually, and the debate is always about whether it's green or blue or gold. All of the colors of the rainbow, but at the end of the day, that is basically how hydrogen is produced. And sometimes in times of trouble, you can only produce it a certain way. But I think it's here to stay because right now we're talking about a portfolio strategy where we need all of the above. Of course, nuclear is coming back in full force with the small nuclear reactors. So I don't think it's an either or anymore. And that's why I think hydrogen is still here to stay. Maybe not in the way where, a lot of the hydrogen projects that were in the past administration were very pie in the sky with a lot of green hydrogen. But I think there's going to be a lot of blue and gray that slowly will transform into greener hydrogen. And I think that's here to stay.
Okay, that's great. Now, thinking about your company, your investors' companies, how these shifts you just described affect yourself and companies?
Yeah, the fact that Energy Backers has this dual structure, UK, Europe, and US, is becoming very beneficial because a lot of our companies are hedging their bets and are looking at Europe very strongly, but also a lot of the UK companies and European companies that we have are still eyeing the US market. The US market is a sort of signal. If you can make it in the US market, you can make it anywhere. And that's why it's important. There's also a lot of later stage investors in the US, and also a lot of companies tend to also exit in US market, like NASDAQ. And now we're even talking about some exit or potential exits in the Texas Stock Exchange that, is becoming interesting too. It looks like SpaceX might be the first IPO there. So I think the interesting side of things is that Texas is becoming more and more, or tries to become more and more attractive to financiers. And that's why I think they've created the Texas Stock Exchange, and they want to make sure that money from investors also flows into Texas and not only money for big corporations.
Okay, how the future looks like for Portfolia and Energy Backers? Let's say if I talk to you in 12 months' time, and you could say, we had a successful year, what that will look like?
So I think for Portfolia this year, we did invest in our 150th company.
Oh, wow.
I think we've done 180 deals because we've reinvested in the same company sometimes. And I don't know how many LPs, I think is over 1,000. So that's kind of critical. For Portfolia, what I see is I want to them to partner with different banks and strategic partners, so that Portfolia really becomes an asset class that other investors who have never invested in early stage can invest in. And that only can happen with big partners like UBS is creating a program for women. There's other big banks and big financial institutions that are doing the same. So I'm excited about that potential partnership there. And I'm always excited about what the new funds portfolio is going to launch in the ecosystem, because Portfolia creates trends in terms of funds. They were the first platform to create a fund in femtech or women's health. And after that, there were like other people creating funds in that space. And I think there's going to be other pretty interesting funds. I think I don't want to reveal too much, but what we normally do is in a more generic fund, we start investing more in an area. Suddenly we say like, okay, this is interesting enough that we're going to spin out a fund only in that. That's how Femtech was created, and Rising America was created, and Active Aging was created. And I think the next one, that area that we're focusing a lot of, is in women's sports. Regarding Energy Backers, I think the most important part for us is, again, to have also a few exits. I think exits in investments are key for our ecosystem in Houston. When I was at Greentown, we incubated Fervo, and Fervo has been the first IPO. It's a geothermal company, the first IPO in geothermal, but also the first IPO in this sector for Houston. So it's a very big signal. We hope that this will be the beginning of a trend in terms of more companies being created in that sector, more entrepreneurs getting to see like, okay, there's light and there's a potential IPO at the end of the tunnel. So I think there's going to be a trickle-down effect of money that is reinvested in this kind of companies. So very, very beneficial for our ecosystem here. And one of the things that Energy Backers is trying to create with other partners, and this is a scoop, so is we're creating a center of energy and AI in Houston, and hopefully that center, like Energy Backers, will also replicate in the different parts of the world we're at. But we really believe that the intersection of energy and AI is very critical. A lot of people talk about powering AI with energy, but the part I'm very interested about is how AI is going to help make the world carbon negative. Because I really believe there's half of the energy that has been created and generated in the world that get wasted. And so there's a lot less that we would need to produce if we didn't waste half of the energy we produce. And I really believe AI can do a lot in terms of energy efficiency, so it can become carbon negative itself.
Okay. Actually, I did talk to one company that they did create negative carbon AI. This is very different than maybe we usually have, but yes, I know that companies do that as well. So if you had a magic wand and could fix one thing in the clean energy investment ecosystem, what would you fix first?
So I think the clean energy efficient investment ecosystem is broken. The VC model, that is the Silicon Valley model, doesn't work for most of the clean energy sustainability companies because they have assets, they have infrastructure. They need more money in general than VC companies do. VC-backed companies, typical. When I'm talking typical VC companies are like more like software companies that can just set up in a garage and exit in 2 years. And also they have a longer time to exit than normal VC companies. And in general, there's an infrastructure and hard technology component that nobody is willing to fund. So there needs to be a different capital stack. Not VC only. There needs to be a mix of grants with debt, with VC, with the venture debt, with all kinds of project finance. And I think for that, you need to have people who understand that capital stack and how to make it efficient. And that's when innovating in finance becomes very interesting. And I think one of the reasons why Fervo made its IPO is not because they have the best technology in geothermal, it's more because they understand very well the financial instruments they could use, the power purchase agreements, the carbon credits, how the loan programs office works, how the grants work, who could be there as a champion, what kind of investors were there that could back them up, like Bill Gates and others. So I think you need to be very knowledgeable on the finance part of things, even more so than the technology that you're going to be using to decarbonize. And so if I had a magic wand, I would try to work a lot more on that, on solving that capital stack, of bringing more non-VC model to this sector, and making more financial innovation so that we have more financial instruments out there to make these deals happen. And I'm working on it. I don't have the one, but I have the stamina and the resilience. So I'm working on it behind the scenes.
That's fantastic. Now, I have a last question. So, what is one piece of advice you would give to the founder of building an environmental or sustainability company?
So I would say it is hard. So you need to have a vision, and I'm talking a personal vision, not only a vision for your company that goes beyond return on investment. I mean, some entrepreneurs are there to, I would say, almost flip companies. They have the recipe for success. They've done it before. They spend a few years, they put it on the stock exchange, or they sell it, and then they come to the next thing, and it's working. But I think for environmental in general, you need to have a passion, because you're going to have a lot of naysayers at the beginning, and when you hear to Fervo speak about how nobody believed that they could use technology that has been used for oil and gas and repurpose it for geothermal, and how you're going to have a lot of naysayers at first. You need to pass through that and pass to the other side of the naysayers. And I think that's something that is critical, having that belief that might almost seem like naivete, but I think it's critical for this kind of entrepreneurs.
Great. That's great. Great advice. Thank you, Juliana. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the Next Gen Environmental Firm. I really enjoyed your experience, your insights, and I hope people who listening, they take a few lessons from here as well, and what they can help their businesses. And thank you again, Juliana. I really appreciate our time.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Thank you for having me.